Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. This is Daniel here. I'm today in Mexico City, out of all places. We normally say we're the consumer goods and retail podcast of Europe, but then we also have in parentheses and beyond. So we do a bit outside of that. And I'm in the Decathlon office. First time I'm in a Decathlon office, which funny enough, I had to go into the store to then go to the office. And it's the first time we're interviewing this retailer, which, as I was telling today's guest, has been very present in my life since I was a kid. So very excited to know more. And I'm sitting here with Bart Ongenaet, who's the Director of Commercial Supply and Wholesale here at Decathlon, Mexico, right?
Exactly, yes.
Fantastic. How are you? All good?
Great, yeah. Thank you for stopping by and visiting us.
No, not at all. It's my pleasure. You said that you've been here in Mexico for 3 years.
Yeah.
How's it been? How do you find the country?
Well, the country, of course, it's amazing. Specifically, the people are so welcoming, so warm, and the country, of course, is huge. So much opportunities. So it's a very interesting country, but also very nice to live.
Yeah. A lot of escapes as well for weekends or holidays. You don't need to leave. Have you found yourself that you don't leave Mexico much?
Exactly.
To go home?
Never
Really?
discovered Mexico, but beyond that, there's so many things to explore.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Any place you'd recommend?
Well, I'm really a mountain lover.
Uh-huh.
So here around Mexico City, there's so many great escapes, mountains to discover by hiking or with bike. So and then of course with the family, sometimes it's amazing to go to the beaches. But it's an amazing
Are you
country.
more a Riviera Maya type of person, or you're more like a Pacific Coast type of person?
I would be more Pacific, but if I need to choose, I'm really more a mountain guy.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so as I said, if you live here, you see unusual things, no? Because
and here in Mexico City, we live at 2,000 meters, and you have great escapes, 1 hour, 2 hour by car.
Is that it?
You find yourself in amazing landscapes where you can do biking, hiking, and amazing. Here we see more like the diving Yucatan atmosphere.
Yeah.
But very close by, you have volcanoes to about 5,000 meter high. So it's really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you're into mountaining.
Yeah.
And you said that you could see the background because some people will be listening to this
Okay.
podcast. No, but I'll actually, it's good that you mention it because I'll remind them that if you're listening to this, you can find a link to the YouTube video in the show notes so they can see our beautiful faces as well and our smiles as we go. And if you're looking at us, here we are. How did you start in your career?
Well, believe it or not, Decathlon was my first job.
Did you also have Decathlon in your life when you were a kid, by the way?
Well, I'm from Belgium, and so when I started, Decathlon in Belgium was still not very present. So in my city, I'm from Ghent, there was not a Decathlon present yet. So it was not that famous yet. But through my ancient babysitter, I got to, because he was working there, and he's still working there. He got to know me, the brand, and I worked in another city, and 18 years later, I'm still here.
Awesome. Well, so so you studied and then you started in Decathlon, or?
Exactly. So when I was finding my way, I knew I always have a couple of passions. Sports, of course, was the first all my life. I did so many sports. I love sports.
Football or others?
I did football all my life, but also cycling, skiing, outdoors, a lot of tennis, a lot of other sports. I come from a quite sport family, so that was quite obvious to choose for Decathlon, even though I didn't really knew the brand. And also when I was a student, I loved working in restaurants, bars, etc. So really this
people focus,
customer, the sale, I would say the rush, the hands-on mentality that you can find in retail. And also I've been in the Boy Scouts. I was a captain of my soccer team.
So you're not someone that stays at home much.
No. and I studied psychology, so also
Oh wow.
like leading teams or human interaction, etc. And when I was talking with my babysitter at the time, because I was looking for a job, and he told me, "Look, I'm in this company. It's really great atmosphere, and uh, it was really amazing because." Of course, I didn't knew it before, but in the first day, they really give you like full responsibility,
Wow.
even though the area is small, but you can recruit your own team.
Wow.
You have your own P&L, etc. So
Your own P&L when you do. What was your first job
yeah,
actually?
really start in a store, and they give you like a small section. For me, it was like the bike section, and you have 4 or 5 salespeople in your team.
Was it like a
And
graduate scheme or something, or it was just like working in the store?
no, it was really working in the store, really hands-on, but already it's a great management school, and already they give you the feeling that you really have your own small shop
Yeah.
inside, of course, a huge corporate organization with a lot of tools, etc. But yeah, it was amazing, and 18 years later, I'm still here. So
There must be a reason. No, but I've heard from people that I've met, I don't know, growing up in Barcelona, like people that I've known that have worked in Decathlon, and that they've said that the culture is very good in general, like that you get to, that basically like the managers are like pretty hands-on in terms of like, yeah, if something needs to be fixed, they'll fix it, and it's not like super hierarchical in that way, and it is like quite a good environment.
yeah, and of course, it's a big international brand, but they are capable to just give you enough space
Yeah.
and autonomy
Yeah.
to make initiatives, to create your own small marketing plan, to create your own offer. So for me, being I remember one school teacher told me, you will never get far in life because you cannot stand the authority.
Ah,
And somehow, of course, there are guidelines and directions
but
and
you
rules,
went into a
etc.
culture that worked for you.
That was a good match with my personality, and sitting. I was not the best student because I cannot sit down too long. So
Yeah.
work in this retail environment was really
There's much
good.
more stimulus to look after as well when you work in a store. And how was the people management piece for you? Like coming out of university? I mean, maybe you'd manage people as a voice, as a scout or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but as I told you, it's a really great, I would say, management school, because they really give you in a
Yeah.
protected area
Yeah.
already the full responsibility.
Yeah.
And of course, this kind of, I would say, leadership, maybe it was natural, because yeah, with my friends or in Boy Scout or in my sports clubs, I was quite a guy, hands-on, organizing the things, etc. So it's a position where I feel confident,
Yeah.
creating a project together, motivating the people, management. And then, of course, when I study psychology, quite fast, I knew I would want to graduate more in the business psychology, so more in coaching, leadership, etc.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah, that was
Before coaching was actually a thing, no?
before coaching was actually
Yeah.
exactly.
How did you go from store to corporate?
Um, well, I worked first couple of years as a like this area manager inside the store, and I was lucky to be able to grow into the company, having more responsibilities. Then I became a store leader
For the whole store.
for a whole store,
Big role.
and yeah, and they
Considering how big Decathlon stores are.
exactly, and they move you from city to city. And so the first store I could manage was really, I would say, a great gift. It was a huge challenge because I was like, I don't know, 27 or something, and they gave me the top 3 stores in the world, which is in Antwerp.
Wow.
It's 8,000 square meters, 250 people working there. At that time, we were doing a crazy turnover. So it was a big jump for me in terms of learning. It was also one of the first stores in Belgium. So you have also huge
responsibility of making that work, no?
That work, but also you're a young guy and you have a salesman who is more than 20 years.
How did you cope with like managing much older people than you, having to take decisions, having to hire and fire people, and and having the pressure from headquarters to make that like.
But, yeah, because I think Decathlon always is very human centered. So there's quite a lot of attention, trainings, guidance on management. The founder, he has this very clear management scheme. I think that helps you a lot with this kind of first step into management. And as I told you, it's from day one. I had the opportunity to lead a small team, a small P&L. So the impact if you make mistakes is not so big, so you can really try and learn.
I guess you get comfortable with making mistakes.
And so like this, I could really grow into the company. And then after leading the store for a couple of years, I became a regional leader of Belgium. And so still 10 years really on the floor. And then I made a move, maybe we can talk later about this. I made a move to Japan to open the retail there. And then it was after the first opening, we were able to, after the first year, to put a local Japanese guy because it's more easy for the culture and language. And then maybe it was my first time to really have more a corporate role. And so since the last, I would say 7 years, I've been a little bit more corporate, even though, as you see today, you go through the store to the office, so
you can't miss it.
You can't miss it. So you're still always quite close to the customer.
As an anecdote, as we were going to the store, there was something on the floor, like some dirt, and you picked it up and cleaned it as well. Which also gives the example of like the culture. Like in another company, you could be in a high horse and completely forget about it. No, I think it's a positive thing, and it tells about the culture. No,
this reflexes that you have when you work so long in the store. Yeah.
And headquarters for you guys in Lille, right, in France.
Exactly. So the company was born 50 years ago in Lille. And of course, a lot of central offices and roles are there. Even though we are now present in 70 countries, and so some of the brands are delocalized. Some of back office services teams are delocalized. But yeah, the heart is still in Lille, in the north of France.
But you've never been based there.
I've never been based there.
Yeah. So you did Belgium, Japan, and now Mexico.
Exactly.
Okay. What about like the business model of Decathlon? So the way I see it, Decathlon is like obviously very focused on sports.
Yeah.
Practically every every sport, but very like, and I think that's the big differentiator. It has very private label focused with a small assortment of your Nikes, Adidas, and other brands.
Well, actually, it was maybe a funny story. I remember hearing this from the founder, because Decathlon just started as a normal sport retailer selling brands.
Like multi-brand.
Cool. And at one point, he couldn't get an order. I think it was from the brand Peugeot still at that time, from bikes. And so
when Peugeot, the car manufacturer, did bikes.
Yeah. And so at that time, I think he said, like, I cannot have the bikes, the purchase order. And so by this limitation, he said, I can create my own brand. And so we started with bikes that was branded Decathlon. And I think that was one of the major choices that Decathlon is what is today, because of the private label. Of course, it makes us so differentiating from other retailers.
Yeah. And currently the vision of the business is to continue in a similar direction?
Yeah, because you asked about the business model. Of course, sometimes there's some small evolutions, but if you take it to the core, since the last 50 years, Decathlon was always there to make sports accessible. That's always been the core, and the benefits of sports and the well-being. So that was really the mission. And of course, what makes us, I think, a little bit different than other brands is the variety of sports, as you mentioned. You can discuss, but here we say 65 sports. And also that we offer from the person who wants to begin the sports, intermediate level to expert level. And in each of these categories, we have shoes, textile, accessories, and material. So it's a very, very complete offer. which if you compare with other sports brands, I think that's really our uniqueness compared to other sports brands.
Yeah. What's the current footprint now of like what countries are you in?
Well, we're present in more than 70 countries,
Okay.
more than 100,000 teammates.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really now we are actually one of the biggest sports retailer in terms of volume as well.
Wow. What's the philosophy around when do you let a brand into your store?
When we accept other brands, you mean? Well, I think, of course, we really always listen to our customers, and we have our private label. Depends a little bit the strategy of the CEO, but it's between in some countries 0 to 5%, or maximum I think around 20%, and it's because we listen to our customers. And in some sports, maybe our own brands don't have the offer, don't have the product, and they really are looking to complement the offer. Or just some customers are really married with their brand, and they said, okay, we want to be there for everybody. So we try to pick the right brands to complement the offer.
No, it's an interesting mix. I think that Decathlon also, one thing that it has is like, it's like, you probably kind of said it before, but it's like accessible without compromising on a basic quality as well.
Exactly.
And as you said, there's different levels, always at a very accessible price.
Always, yeah. And yeah, there's really like value for money. It's at the core of everything, no? And so if you look at how we develop our private label, then in each of those sports or each of those brands have their conception center, where they have engineers, product testing, prototype, everything, really sport labs to really observe the user. So it's a lot of demanding level on the quality and the technicity of the product. And as you asked about the business model, when you want to have really high quality products at accessible price, you need to find other ways. So the marketing, for example, if you compare us maybe 2-3% and other brands 15-20%, that there's a huge big decision for us to really not invest a lot in that, but really put everything in the development of the product and in the accessible price for the customers.
Because the marketing has been like word of mouth and visibility through people seeing the brand, no? Which is what is interesting, like the fact that there's the Decathlon as this retail, but the brands, I don't think there's practically any brands anymore that are called, like when you buy a piece of apparel or material or something, I don't know if anything is called Decathlon anymore. Like it goes by every sport or every area as like...
Exactly. Now, since I would say 3 years, it's sometimes it changed, right? And now we are in this phase where we want to have a little bit less brand names, because it became quite difficult. If you do international expansion, first you need to explain what is Decathlon, and then you have maybe 60 brand names.
Which you and me know perfectly that they're Decathlon, but a new market doesn't understand.
When I was in Japan, already was difficult to pronounce Decathlon. Let's say 65 brands, or even with this marketing budget that we have to create awareness about Decathlon, but also explaining that Quechua is Decathlon, etc. So now, since the last couple of years, we have been reducing the names and regrouping a name for several sports, like racket sports, not a brand for padel, for tennis, for badminton. So Quickma now, it's, for example, the brand for all racket sports. And we also have rebrand Decathlon with a logo, with like a modern identity. And so now you will see this logo almost on all the products, because before each brand had also the different logo.
Okay.
So now it's
so now the common thread is that they have this Decathlon logo.
So we have only some expert brands. Van Riesel, it's the brand for high-end road cycling. Kipron, that's now positioning for running. And we have Simon, that is really for mountaineering. And those are like the only 3 brands, that they can really create their own image, own logo, and storytelling, because they're looking for a new customer, which is really the expert slash professional, which is a quite new segment that we are discovering a couple of years.
And do the Decathlon stores vary a lot depending on the country, like the space that each sport or type of sport occupies?
Yeah, for sure. When I told you, when I 18 years ago started in that store, the first thing I had to do was to create my own commercial policy to analyze the market, the local market, your 20, 30-minute living area, to discover the sports practice, the clubs, and to, from this, of course, international catalog, to choose the right adapted offer on the local demands. So yeah, for sure.
At a store level, eh?
At store level, yeah, at store level. So our store leaders, they need to choose their offer adapted to their local living area.
Wow, interesting. Like in Japan, what were the stores? Did the stores, was there anything surprising in terms of over what sports are popular there?
Japan was a really, I would say, roller coaster. If we can explain a little bit about that, because of course, when you open a country, it is always a challenge to really understand, specifically as if you come from with international people, to really understand the local needs, etc. So, of course, you do a first summary, and you try to open the first store with an offer that is really connected to the local demands. And what we saw, the Japanese, they love new things. So the first months we broke every record. It was crazy sales, but when the novelty was gone, we saw suddenly a huge drop in visitors.
Wow.
And then also came COVID. So those two things combined, we were analyzing that in the Japanese market, which is the second sports market of the world, it's huge.
And after the US?
Yeah, after US. Maybe now with China, I don't have the latest numbers, but yeah, it's huge. And what is really specific about Japan is that they have a lot of local brands that some of us, we know in the Western world. For example, Yonex, we know it very well from racket sports, or Mizuno. But then you come to Japan.
But that's the only two it's the only one I know.
No, but you have Essex.
Ah, yes, that's true. Onioska.
But then, you go to Japan, and Yonex for me was like more racket sport brand. And you come there and you see flagship of Yonex. They sell bikes, they sell snowboards, they sell, and so what is this? So in this highly saturated market where they have everything, entry-level price, high-end price, and even the Decathlon shop, like 4,000 square meter, where you can experience, touch the products, etc. Even that concept was not so new for them. And so it was really interesting because after 2 years, we really decided to change completely the business model there. And we saw that some products really had an added value to the country. A lot of innovative products that didn't exist there. In outdoor hiking, camping, a lot of innovative products like snorkeling, stand-up paddle, etc. And so in this niche, we decided to change the business model, and we went from a fully integrated company to just open wholesale.
Wow.
So we closed the stores, and we completely changed. And it was quite interesting because at the same moment, a colleague of mine, Franco, in the United States, was kind of like living the same thing. You go to the States.
You have REI and
everything. And so we were like in the same place, trying to re-challenge the business model and to really penetrate these new mature markets. And so I'm talking about 2020, 2020, something like this. And the funny thing now, Franco is now leader of Wholesale International, and it become a whole new, I would say, growth lever for Decathlon, to say, look, if you want to succeed in some markets, maybe the best way is not to open our store, our web, but to really use already the strong retailers, and we become a brand selling our products through them.
Interesting.
And now it's one of the strategic growth levers for the coming years.
Very interesting. And actually in line with that, I mentioned that before we recorded, that like you've also like got into things that like I'd never imagined Decathlon to go into. Like I think that you're sponsoring, I don't know if it's Conference League or one of these,
Yeah, it's
or some football clubs, some like pretty high up football clubs and sports stars that you're sponsoring.
exactly. That started like 3-4 years ago when we saw, look, since I don't know, 45 years, the people who work inside Decathlon, they know how amazing the products are, the quality of it. But because we don't do about a lot of marketing, and especially if you go outside of Europe where Decathlon is not that known, it's so difficult to explain.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
3-4 years ago, we choose some specific projects, like we now have a world tour cycling team, Decathlon.
Wow.
They're using everything: helmets, glasses, textile, even the bikes. We have running shoes that the Olympian are wearing now. We have footballs that are playing in the highest leagues of Europe. But actually, those products almost were always there.
Yeah, it's not like you had to invent new products.
And because of the price point that we have, some customers in new markets, they said, "Is this quality or not?"
No, of course. But then if you see the professionals using it, the perception of quality, is it the whole, and is it working well so far?
Yes, especially in those new markets where Decathlon is still quite unknown.
Yeah.
This storytelling, of course, helps to say, like, okay, how can you have such a great price? Is it really the good quality? People always have these doubts, right?
Yeah, of course.
For us specifically in countries like Japan, but also here in Mexico, which sometimes is a quite inspirational market, it really helps to convince some people of the quality of the products.
Yeah, and it comes to show that like it's all about perception, no? Because one could say, I mean, maybe it's not the most accurate example, but Apple or Nespresso, because they have monobrand stores, that their quality is not good, right? It's all about changing that perception. I mean, maybe they're not the cheapest, but
yeah, and for some customers, existing customers in Europe, it was very surprising to say, Decathlon is like going away from its core about accessibility, because suddenly you find a $9,000 bike in the store.
Yeah.
But still in that segment, it's still very accessible.
Yeah.
So it was it's an interesting period now for us.
Because you have to keep the old customers and then the new ones, and also staying up to date with the trends, no, which could kill any business if if you're not careful. How do you guys perceive, I don't know if that's the right word, but consider the online channel? Like, because I don't know, when I think of Decathlon, I think of like the big stores, right? Where you can find everything in sports, but online is obviously something to not be ignored, right?
Of course, but we need to, how we say, honor the past, and you need to understand where we come from. It was 50 years ago, so that time to open 2, 3, 4,000 square meter sports mega stores, it was really innovative. It was not there. It was the time that the middle class had the car, would go outside the city center, and this like big shopping mall. Well, like big, like I take my car to a big retailer and come back.
In Barcelona, it's a bit different because we know that we have high rides and we don't use the car that much, but because we had it like in the city as well. So
exactly, but for sure we are born from that. So but
of course that's a very French thing as well. The big going with the car shopping to the big
to the retail parks. We were born in France in 76, so that's where we come from.
That was one developing,
but the good thing about the internationalization and the really I would say culture of pushing the decision-making process as close as possible to the customer helps us to be innovative. So when you open a country like Germany or China, where maybe e-commerce is much further, well, of course, it helps us to learn faster and to get good practices from there in our, I would say, more central central approach. But of course, online is very present. I think the share is in some countries already quite high, but for sure we are building 40 years physical retail. But even the last years, what is also, so I was telling you about wholesale, which was a new growth lever, and also since a couple of years, Decathlon launched the internal marketplace.
Ironically, no?
Ironically,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would say the historic physically retailer becomes now the sports marketplace, and now it launched in Europe.
And in Europe, it's the space that you've kind of claimed.
Yeah,
which is great.
We have now launched in Asia. We're checking here in Mexico if we launch it in the coming months or years. But it's a huge growth lever. And if you see the visitors we have on our web, it was a logic choice. And so internationally, the guy who is responsible for digital e-commerce has also the responsibility of internal marketplace. So it's a huge growth lever for us as well for the coming years.
Interesting. Yeah. And I wonder what drove the decision to, ironically, contradictory to the mainstream business, to go when you went online to do marketplace and have like a higher percentage of other brands. It's an interesting, I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive, but now it makes, like in hindsight, it makes sense, but it's kind of counterintuitive at the beginning.
Of course, you see those marketplaces growing. Of course, we know the Amazons or here the Mercado Libres, and you can see them and say, okay, we can do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Or you can see what are your internal assets and say, look, imagine the visitors that we have, the credibility that we have as a sports brand.
Yeah.
We can claim a space in this marketplace landscape as the referent for sports goods. And it's going very well.
And I have to say, the in-store digitalization in Decathlon, you wouldn't perceive it very quickly, but when you go and pay, at least in Barcelona, they're one of the only retailers that you have like a box and you put the products in and it automatically counts them. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. And this we have already, like we launched 10 years ago we were one of the first, I would say, mass market retailers that would have in each product RFID chips, which in the beginning we used mostly for inventory to be more efficient, because if you have such a big stores and you have automatic supply systems,
inventory planning must be super important.
Inventory is key, right? But now you can see it in different applications like the cash out, autonomously cash out. If people wants to compare products, we have those boards in the store that they can put the product and immediately the chip identifies and they can compare. So it was
interesting. And what is your current role here in Mexico? Because you're doing commercial, supply, and wholesale.
Yeah, of course. Each country we have the classic roles, but of course the growth or the situation of each country sometimes
requires a different role.
Requires to do a little bit more Swiss Army knife than the typical structure role,
which is smart. Well, it's a bit of the local first type of philosophy, no?
Exactly. So I have the opportunity to really lead a very amazing project, because it's from the beginning, from how to import and the customs. I have a team about this. Then we have a team who buys the products, really the suppliers. I have a team, the commercial directors per sports, to really choose the offer, choose the commercial strategies per sports. And we have 4 sales channels. Of course, we have our stores, our web, and then we have wholesale with B2B marketplaces. So I'm directly in charge of all the wholesale sales channels.
Oh, very cool. And who would be your like typical wholesale customers?
But we made ourselves the analyze about the Mexican market. It's a country almost the size of Europe.
It's 120 million people.
It's 130 million people. If you go from north to south, it's 3,500 kilometers.
Yeah, and quite. I was recording a podcast before, and we were talking about quite a high urban population as well, more than some people would expect. Like you have a lot of like cities that are over 500,000 people.
Yeah, a lot. But so seeing that landscape, of course, if you want to be a big player in a country like this, or you need to really invest massively in store openings, but it's a bit slower, I would say, project. And what we noticed is that Mexican customers, for a lot of reasons, they choose marketplaces. 50% of all the digital sales in Mexico is done on marketplace. Amazon, Mercado Libre, because it's safety to buy. They have an environment of different payment methods, and Mexicans are very aware where they buy their products online. The trust level.
There's a huge online fraud percentage, right?
Yeah, fortunately.
Yeah.
We can
I
see
heard about that.
We can see also there. So they really trust more in those marketplaces because they know there if there's something missing,
it's reliable,
etc. And so we said, and we can really collaborate, create a nice project with them. And so we have since 2 years now also an official store in Mercado Libre, and we really have an amazing project that we are building together with them.
Mercado Libre is super interesting company.
Yeah.
We've covered it a couple of times on the podcast. Head of ads here in Mexico, and we also interviewed the CMO of Mercado Libre, which was super interesting. How have you been able to so we talked at the beginning about like managing people. I mean, Belgium, Japan, and then Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's look now a little bit with some distance. I would say. First of all, I do have this background of psychology, my university studies. So maybe I think in the core, what are the human needs, the human motivation, the drivers, maybe are not that different. When I was in Japan, you have this concept of ikigai. I don't know if you.
Yeah, it means like balance, no, or something.
It's like if you find something like what you're good at, what's really purpose for you, what motivates you, what can also provide you money, and then what's your talent. It's for them like you find your ikigai, and when you travel a lot or you visit a lot of countries, you see that this concept in different wording, you see it almost everywhere, and it's really there are some interesting books where people interview people at the end of their life stage, like life lessons or whatever, and you see a lot of things are super common. But of course, you cannot deny that there's a thick cultural layer, and you need to see you need to learn them to gain the trust, to go to a deeper level with the people, and I think those cultural differences are a lot on the way that people are doing, but it's the superficial layer. But they're crucial to know, because in Japan, I must be honest, I broke so many social codes in the beginning because you don't know them. And it breaks the confidence.
I break them in Europe already. I wouldn't want to imagine in Japan.
No, but and specifically Japan is, of course, such an on this topic, such a different country. It's an island. It has been isolated.
It's a microcosmos.
It's a microcosmos.
It's what you talked about, like all these brands that they have that you would never know outside. No, I think that.
And it goes from so many small things: the way you talk, the way you respect hierarchy, the way you show your business cards.
I think you have to show it like with both hands,
like this with the two hands. The way you need to respect the rhythm. It's for them specifically. For example, when we launched Wholesale, for me was okay, great. I have good products. You're a big retailer. Baf, what we do? Let's go. And for them to really. They take so much the time to gain the trust, to create the process, and it drives me crazy sometimes, this patience. But if you don't respect this patience, you lose the trust. You don't do business.
No.
And also a direct no. It's impossible there. You cannot say no. You should use different words, and
You cannot say no. And for me, what I would find very complicated is that you don't get a no.
That's the other thing. You and when you don't get a no, but they are trying to tell you something, and they have an expression in Japan. They say you need to read the air. But also, I'm from, I would say, more Nordic culture. A bit more straightforward communication. Cut the crap like this. So okay, and so that's why you need to adapt. You need to accept. You need to learn it in order to gain the trust, and then you see that the differences are not so big.
Yeah. But there's this big barrier of all these cultural norms.
It's crazy. If here in Mexico, you go directly to a person really task-oriented without asking, how's your family, or what did you eat? Because the food culture, you need to have the small talk. It's super important. If I would do this, even with a teammate in Japan, to do this like small chit-chats, trying to ask private information, it would be not so appropriate, you know?
No, for sure. It's like, I don't know, in Germany as well, when you do business with somebody in Germany, you need to really tell them who you are, what are your intentions, and what exactly relationship you want to establish with that person, and then it's like a different level.
And so I'm lucky to be able to work in different countries, but also my direct colleagues. I met people from so many countries. It's amazing.
You're pretty multinational here.
Very multinational, even here in Mexico, but also in meetings or in trainings, you meet people from India, China. It's amazing, and you need to be open, interested in those cultural differences, and to really accept them, learn them, and able to achieve common goals.
And you probably feel now, like, having done these two big moves, that like if you do another one, you'll have kind of a process, I guess, to understand. No,
for sure. I will definitely
not break so many codes.
Take off my Belgian glasses and ask, observe, in order to create common projects, because it's always like this. You can push things, but if you get pushed, you push back, and so the goal is to really create something together. And when the moment that you arrive this, then it's the magic moment, and everything flows from there.
Yeah. And speaking of our learnings, there's this one question we ask all the guests here on the podcast. Don't worry, I wrote it down before it. It's nothing that you won't expect. No, it's like, if you went back to like the beginning of your career and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be dare to jump in the unknown and trust yourself. It would be definitely this. I think
that works. That works.
Some other lessons for sure, to really enjoy the way, the process, because the problem when I just started, I made a mistake in ordering too many bikes, for example, and you have sleepless nights because they're overstock in your store. But if you see it right now, it's like a minor project. So to have patience, to learn, to relativate some things. But I think to dare yourself to jump out of your comfort zone, I think, and to trust what happens. I think that would be maybe the lesson I would give.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for having me, Bart. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for joining. It was really...
We had a good laugh.
Yeah, the time flew.
It normally does. Well, thanks to our audience for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG Guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.